All right, so you're thinking about buying a home.
Big step.
Huge step.
Yeah.
And you sent over the Home Buyer's Toolkit to help get you started.
Lots of great information in there.
Yeah, lots to unpack for sure. So in this deep dive, we're going to pull out the need-to-know stuff from the toolkit.
Get right to the heart of it.
Exactly.
The stuff that really matters.
Yeah, we want to equip you to make those smart choices with confidence.
Absolutely.
You know, buying a home, it's a big decision.
It is.
One of the biggest for most people.
Absolutely.
The toolkit really stresses something right off the bat that I think is really important.
What's that?
Making sure you have someone on your side.
Someone in your corner.
Yes,
Yeah.
an advocate looking out for you.
Throughout the whole process.
Yeah. So let's jump right into step one.
Sounds good.
Finding a qualified buyer's representative.
Absolutely.
What exactly does a buyer's rep do?
Okay, so a buyer's representative is basically your,
Champion.
in the real estate world.
Okay.
They work for you, the buyer. Got it.
Not the seller.
Okay, that's a key difference.
Huge difference.
So they're obligated to put your interests first.
Exactly. They owe loyalty and confidentiality.
So they're looking out for you and keeping your information private.
Exactly.
Can you give an example of how that would play out in a real situation?
Sure. Let's say you uncover a problem with a property.
Like what?
Well, maybe there's a history of roof repairs that the seller didn't disclose.
No, that's not good.
Right? And my duty is to tell you about it right away.
Even if it means the deal might fall apart.
Even then.
Wow, so they're really on your side.
100% my loyalty is to you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So there's a standard of integrity.
Exactly. But ABR has gone above and beyond that. How so?
They've completed special training.
Focused specifically on representing buyers.
Right.
So they have a deeper understanding of the buyer's needs.
And the challenges buyers face.
And the negotiation strategies that work best for buyers.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
They're more likely to spot potential pitfalls for buyers, too.
That's good to know. So it's a sign that they really know their stuff when it comes to representing buyers.
Absolutely.
The toolkit even tells you where to find one.
You're ready to choose a buyer's representative.
Okay.
The toolkit has some smart questions for you to ask. Let's start with experience and credentials.
Okay.
What should you be asking about here?
You want someone who's been there, done that. The toolkit says you should ask what duties they owe you and what choices you have as a buyer.
That's a good one.
It sounds a little technical, though.
It is a bit, but the main thing is to understand the basis of your relationship.
Okay.
Your buyer's representative should clearly explain those duties.
The loyalty and confidentiality we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
And they should also explain any different types of representation that are available.
So you know exactly who they're working for and how that impacts you.
Transparency is key.
Absolutely.
What about the services they provide?
Okay.
The toolkit mentions a written buyer agreement.
Right.
Why is it important to have that in writing?
A written agreement spells out exactly what services they will provide.
At each stage of the process.
Right. And what your responsibilities are.
So it prevents misunderstandings down the line?
Exactly. And it makes the whole experience smoother and more predictable.
Okay, so everyone's on the same page from the start. All right, now let's talk about finding properties.
Sounds good.
The toolkit mentions access to the multiple listing service, or MLS.
Right.
What is that and why is it so important?
The MLS is like a giant database of properties for sale.
Okay.
It's a network of real estate brokers who share information about their listings.
So it's the most efficient way to find homes that meet your criteria.
Absolutely. And it's the most transparent.
What about those public real estate websites?
They can be helpful for initial research.
But they don't have everything.
Right. They're not always completely up to date either.
Okay, so your buyer's rep can get you access to listings you might not find online.
Exactly. And they can tell you the most current status of a property.
Like whether it's already under contract.
Exactly.
That's like having a secret weapon.
In a way, yeah.
All right, moving on to personal support.
Okay.
Will the buyer's rep personally handle everything, or will you be working with a team?
That's a good question.
What should you be looking for in their answer?
It really depends on your preferences. Some buyers like having one point of contact the whole time.
Others are comfortable with a team approach.
Right.
The important thing is to clarify who your main contact will be.
And who will be explaining those important documents to you.
And guiding you through each step.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about negotiating.
Okay.
The toolkit suggests asking how they'll advise you on strategy and how they'll present your offer.
This is a critical stage.
Yeah, it can be tricky.
It can.
So what should you be looking for in a buyer's rep's negotiating skills?
They should have a deep understanding of the market.
Okay.
And they should be able to explain their strategy clearly.
So you feel confident in their approach.
Exactly.
Now, what about financing?
Okay.
The toolkit says you should ask about their guidance on affordability mortgage options and choosing a lender.
Right.
And they also mention the difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval.
That's a key distinction.
Yeah, why is it important to discuss financing with your buyer's rep?
Your buyer's rep should be able to help you understand what you can afford. Okay. And they can explain the benefits of getting pre-qualified and pre-approved,
Which is really important.
especially for first-time buyers.
Yeah, it can be really confusing
They might also have recommendations for lenders.
based on their experience working with them in the past. So
Exactly.
they can help you navigate that whole process.
Exactly.
The toolkit also mentions referrals for other service providers.
Like who?
Like home inspectors, movers, appraisers.
Yeah.
Why is that helpful?
Good buyer's reps have a network of trusted professionals.
So they can save you time and hassle.
Absolutely. Especially if you're new to the area.
That's great. Now, finally, the question of compensation.
Okay.
The toolkit says you should ask how they'll be compensated.
All right.
What are the common ways a buyer's rep gets paid?
There are a few different models.
Like what?
Sometimes the seller offers compensation to the buyer's broker.
Okay,
It might be a fixed fee that you pay directly,
got it.
or maybe a concession from the seller that you can use to cover the fee. It could also be a percentage of the listing broker's compensation.
So there are several possibilities.
Exactly.
The toolkit also brings up an important point.
What's that?
What happens if the seller isn't offering any compensation to the buyer's broker?
Or if the offered amount is less than what you've agreed to pay your buyer's rep.
Right.
That's something you need to discuss up front.
To avoid any surprises.
Exactly.
So you need to have a clear understanding of the potential costs from the beginning.
Absolutely. Open communication is key.
Okay, so step one is finding the right buyer's representative.
Very important.
Now let's move on to step two,
Okay.
assessing your credit and finances.
Getting your financial ducks in a row.
Exactly.
Crucial step.
The toolkit really emphasizes doing this early in the process.
Right.
Why is that so important?
Well, it gives you a realistic picture of what you can afford.
So you don't waste time looking at properties that are out of reach.
Exactly.
And it makes you a more attractive buyer to sellers.
Especially if you're pre-approved for a mortgage.
Right, because it shows you're serious.
And it can help speed up the closing process.
Okay, so first things first, you need to check your credit status.
Absolutely.
That's the best way to do that.
You're entitled to a free credit report from each of the 3 major credit bureaus every year,
Which are?
Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion.
And where do you get those?
The only official website is annualcreditreport.com.
Okay, I'll make a note of that.
You can also call them at 877-322-8228.
Good to know.
Checking your credit report early lets you fix any errors.
Which can affect your mortgage interest rate.
Even if you think your credit is good, it's always best to double check.
You never know.
Right.
All right, next up, selecting a lender.
Okay.
The toolkit recommends comparing several lenders.
Good advice.
What should you be comparing?
The interest rates they're offering,
Okay.
their closing costs and fees.
And the terms of the mortgage itself.
Exactly.
What if you already have a mortgage with a particular bank?
It's worth contacting them to see what they can offer. The toolkit says you should gather preliminary information online and by phone.
Okay.
But then you should meet with lenders directly
Either by phone video call or in person.
to get more detailed information and see if they're a good fit.
What are the most important mortgage factors to pay attention to?
The interest rate and the loan term.
Those are the big ones.
They determine your monthly payment.
Along with the amount you borrow.
Exactly.
Can you explain what those terms mean?
Sure, the interest rate is the cost of borrowing the money,
Okay.
and the loan term is how long you have to repay the loan,
Which is usually,
15 or 30 years.
got it.
Shorter loan terms mean higher monthly payments.
But you pay less interest overall.
Right.
The toolkit also mentions locking in an interest rate.
Right.
What does that mean?
It means the interest rate you're approved for won't change.
Even if market interest rates go up.
Exactly.
So it gives you peace of mind.
Especially if you're worried about rates rising.
Okay, now let's talk about fixed rate mortgages versus adjustable rate mortgages. What's the difference?
With a fixed rate mortgage, the interest rate stays the same for the entire loan term.
So your monthly payments are predictable.
Right. With an adjustable rate mortgage, the interest rate is fixed for an initial period.
Then it adjusts based on market rates.
Exactly.
Got it. The toolkit mentions a mortgage calculator on Realtor.com.
That can help you see how different rates and terms affect your payments.
Yeah, very helpful. Now this is a big one.
What's that?
The difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval.
Very important.
What's the distinction?
Pre-qualification is a quick, informal estimate of what you might be able to afford.
Okay.
Pre-approval is a more formal process.
So the lender actually reviews your financial document.
Right, and they give you a written commitment for a specific loan amount.
Subject to the appraisal and final underwriting?
Exactly.
What are the benefits of getting pre-approved?
It makes your offer stronger.
Because it shows you're a serious buyer.
Right.
And it can shorten the closing time.
Absolutely.
Okay, how do lenders determine how much you can afford?
They look at two main financial ratios.
Okay.
Your total monthly mortgage payment as a percentage of your gross income.
Got it.
And your total monthly debt obligations relative to your income.
That includes the new mortgage payment and any other debts you have.
Right.
They also consider the loan-to-value ratio.
Which is the amount you're borrowing compared to the home's value.
So a higher LTV is riskier for the lender.
Exactly.
Now, the toolkit breaks down a typical mortgage payment into what they call PITI.
Right.
Can you explain what that means?
Sure. PITI stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
Okay, so those are the four main components of your monthly payment.
Exactly.
And the lender usually collects the taxes and insurance in an escrow account.
And pays them on your behalf.
So you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Now, what about other expenses beyond PITI?
There are several things to consider.
Like what?
Private mortgage insurance. If you have a down payment less than 20%.
Okay.
Home maintenance and repairs. Owners association fees, if applicable.
Got it.
Parking fees and utilities.
So you need to factor all of those costs into your budget.
Absolutely.
Now, about down payments, the toolkit says they typically range from 3 to 10%.
For many buyers, yes.
What about mortgage insurance?
If your down payment is less than 20%, the lender will usually require you to pay for PMI.
Private mortgage insurance.
Right. It protects the lender if you default on the loan.
Okay, so it allows you to buy a home with a smaller down payment.
But it's an additional monthly expense.
Got it.
Once you have enough equity in your home, you can usually have it removed.
That's good to know. Okay, so we've covered assessing your finances.
Step 2 complete.
Now let's move on to step 3.
Okay.
Defining your home wants and needs.
Figuring out what you're really looking for.
Exactly.
Important step.
The toolkit says you need to set clear priorities.
And be prepared to make trade-offs.
Right? You're not always going to find a home that has everything you want.
It rarely happens.
So how do you start defining what you're looking for?
Start by thinking about what's absolutely essential versus what would be nice to have.
Okay.
Your ABR can be a big help here.
How so?
They can help you sort through your options and provide insights into the local market.
They can help you figure out what's realistic.
Exactly.
Now, the toolkit breaks down the things to consider into several categories.
Makes sense.
Let's start with basic criteria.
Okay.
What falls under that category?
Your price range.
Okay.
The size of the home you need.
The type of home.
Like single-family condo townhome.
The number of bedrooms and bathrooms.
And whether you need parking.
Got it. So those are the non-negotiables.
For many buyers, yes.
Now, what about other home preferences?
That's where you get into more specifics.
Like what?
Your preferred architectural style.
Okay.
The age of the property.
A layout.
Any must-have features.
Like a fireplace or updated kitchen.
Exactly.
Whether you need specialized rooms.
Like a home office or a finished basement.
Your storage needs.
And how important energy efficiency is to you.
Okay, those are all good things to think about. Now, location is obviously huge.
Absolutely.
What location factors should you be considering?
Any preferred neighborhoods or school districts?
Okay.
Your commute?
Yeah.
Proximity to amenities?
Like shops, restaurants, parks.
Exactly.
What about the views?
And the overall feel of the neighborhood.
Those are important too.
For many people, yes.
Now, what about the lot itself?
Oh,
The toolkit mentions lot characteristics.
that refers to the physical attributes of the land,
Like the size and shape of the lot,
the landscaping,
whether there's a patio or deck.
and the orientation of the house.
Okay, and then there's life at home.
Right.
What lifestyle factors should you consider?
Whether you have children or pets,
Okay.
any multi-generational living situations.
Like aging parents living with you.
Right. How much privacy do you want?
Now, the toolkit talks about trade-off questions. Can
Oh.
you give some examples?
Sure. Would you be willing to buy a fixer-upper to get into your dream neighborhood?
Okay.
Or would you consider a smaller home in a more walkable area?
What about looking in a different neighborhood altogether?
These are the kinds of things to discuss with ABR.
To see what compromises you might be willing to make.
Exactly.
Finally, the toolkit mentions resale considerations.
Okay.
Why think about resale value if you plan to stay in the home for a long time?
Well, life happens.
You might have to sell sooner than you expect.
Right. So it's smart to choose a home with good resale potential.
how long you plan to stay in the home can influence your choices?
especially when it comes to location
Okay,
and how much you're willing to invest in renovations.
got it. The toolkit also mentions fair housing laws.
Important topic.
What's the key takeaway for buyers?
It's illegal for real estate agents to discriminate against you based on protected characteristics.
Like your race, religion, or family status?
Exactly.
So they can't steer you toward or away from certain neighborhoods based on those factors. You can provide information about different neighborhoods.
But they have to do it fairly and ethically.
Absolutely. All right, now we come to step 4.
The home search.
Exactly. The toolkit starts by talking about evaluating neighborhoods.
Right.
What should you be looking into beyond just the houses themselves?
The overall character of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Not statistics,
Right.
school quality, even if you don't have kids.
Yeah, because it affects resale value.
And the availability of amenities.
Shops, restaurants, parks.
Exactly.
Now, the internet has changed everything when it comes to house hunting.
For sure.
The toolkit mentions websites like Realtor.com.
Very popular.
What role do those sites play?
They're great for initial research,
You can get a broad overview of what's available,
but they're not always completely up to date.
so you might miss out on new listings.
Or the status might not be accurate.
Okay, so where does your ABR fit in?
Your ABR has direct access to the MLS.
The multiple listing service.
Right, so they see new listings and updates faster
And they can set up customized searches for you.
based on your specific criteria
And they can provide valuable context about properties and neighborhoods.
that you might not find online.
So they're really essential.
Absolutely.
Now, once you start finding some promising homes,
Okay.
the toolkit has some advice on viewing and comparing properties.
What do they say?
They say you should revisit your list of needs versus wants.
From step 3.
Right, and use that to evaluate each home.
Good idea.
They also suggest creating a comparison table.
To track the pros and cons of different homes.
But they also acknowledge the emotional aspect.
A home should feel right.
Exactly.
It's important to share your honest reactions with your ABR.
So they can refine your search.
Absolutely.
Now, what if you decide to attend open houses on your own
Okay.
before you've seen them with your ABR?
The toolkit has some advice for that.
What is it?
You should tell the seller's agent that you're working with a buyer's representative.
And give them your ABR's contact information. They also say you shouldn't reveal too much personal information to the seller's agent,
Like your financial situation or your negotiating strategy.
because it could weaken your position.
Exactly.
Okay, that's all really helpful advice. And speaking of finding the right buyer's representative,
Yes.
if you're in the metro Atlanta area in Georgia,
Okay.
I would highly recommend checking out Erie Realty.
I've heard good things about them,
They have a great reputation for working with buyers.
so that's a great place to start your search.
Exactly. So, to recap, we've walked through the first 4 steps outlined in the Home Buyer's Toolkit.
Finding a buyer's representative, assessing your finances, defining your wants and needs, and searching for homes.
And as we've seen, working with a qualified buyer's representative, especially an ABR, can make a huge difference
It can really simplify the process.
and help you avoid costly mistakes.
And it ensures that you have someone looking out for your best interests every step of the way.
So, to our listeners out there, we encourage you to take that first step.
Find a great buyer's rep.
And if you're in Metro Atlanta, check out Erie Realty
They're a good bet.
and take some time to really think about what you want in a home
What's important to you?
and how it fits into your overall financial plan.
The right guidance and support can make all the difference in finding the perfect home for you.
Absolutely.
Happy house hunting.